Hi, I'm Stacey.
Hello,
Hi.
Kevin. Very nice. Oh, nice
Oh my God!
to meet you.
No way!
Way.
You are on Meta.
Yep.
That is so great. I saw your video uploaded today. I was like, oh great, some of the Kodak's finally on Meta.
Yeah.
So I want to give you like a hug almost. Like, let me give you a hug. Hi. So good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I haven't actually got one myself yet, which is really embarrassing.
Very nice to meet you.
So thank you all for coming and waiting in line for these experiences. But hopefully this will be an enlightening talk that you guys can talk about and mingle with afterward. And it seems like the room has emptied out a little bit. So after the discussion, you should be able to get through those final experiences that you haven't had a chance to yet. So we'll start about 15 seconds.
And if I'm here, like what's the...
You can still see it, but it's always best to have it at people's eye level, and whoever you're mainly talking with, you know.
I'm Nick. I am the Global VR Evangelist for Kaleidoscope, and thank you. So thank you all for coming. It's a great turnout, and it's awesome to see so many people excited about virtual reality, specifically about storytelling in virtual reality. It's a brand new medium, and we're just starting to unpack it. We're just figuring out what it's all about. So Kaleidoscope is a virtual reality company that focuses on content creation and the independent artists. So it's our mission to kind of put them in the spotlight, explain and showcase to people what they're doing, and bring other people from outside of the medium into it. Writers, poets, dancers, I mean, everyone. To start exploring VR and what they can do. So one thing that VR truly has the potential to do is reinvent storytelling. We've been confined to a window, we've been confined to one perspective, and that's not the way that we actually engage with stories in real life, right? Cinema has kind of been the dominant storytelling art form for the past 100 years, and we are finally breaking into this new medium, this new frontier where we can jump right into the story and really experience it firsthand. So virtual reality it's not TV to 3D TV. It's a quantum leap. It's radio to TV. It's, you know, the written word to cinema. It's way bigger than anything that we've seen in hundreds of years. But all of that potential it's just that. It's potential, right? And it takes the artists, it takes you guys, it takes the people who are sitting down, who are excited to learn about this, to really begin to jump in and explore what it means to tell a story in VR. So all of this awesomeness, all of this potential right now is not going to be realized unless we actually have people jumping in and pushing the limits, you know, taking risks and doing things that are unconventional. That's how we're going to learn. That's how we're really going to figure out what this thing is. We're just scratching the surface, right? We have DK1, DK2 setups. The Gear VR is a consumer version, but we're just getting going. So it's so new, it's so cutting edge, it's so different. We need you guys to really join the community and be a part of this and help explore it with us. So why we're here tonight is to help celebrate these pioneers, these risk takers, these wide-eyed auteurs who are truly jumping in and taking that risk and that are really exploring this medium for its full potential. And it's the Wild West right now, right? Like, we have to define an entire new language that we haven't yet figured out, and these people are actually doing it. They're the ones that are pushing it forward. So we're here to celebrate them, learn from them, and hopefully get some tidbits and information to help make you guys who are creating content create even better content. So with that being said, you know, we're here for a reason. We're here to start a movement. We're here to get people riled up and excited about this new medium. And I encourage all of you to join the movement, join Kaleidoscope, help us push this globally. We're going to be going on this world tour. We're hitting 10 cities across 9 countries in 43 days. It's going to be insane. It's going to be a wild ride, but the goal is to expose people to this medium, artists across disciplines. You know, like I mentioned, the writers, the dancers, the poets, the painters. Everybody needs to start exploring virtual reality. It's not just, you know, Unity engineers or game developers. We need the poets to talk to the game developers. We need the writers to speak with the Unity engineers. Rising Stars, a virtual reality artist panel, This panel is brought to you by G Technology, who is making hard drives and helping you store all of those huge VR files. But I want to start by introducing Rashid. So as I introduce you, feel free to come on. So Rashid is the technical project lead at Google. He's on the Spotlight team, and he's working on Ace, which is in that corner on the Google Cardboards. I encourage you all to check it out. We also have Jessica Brillhart. Give it up for Jessica Brillhart. So Jessica is the principal filmmaker for VR at Google. And if you guys are on Medium, you need to go follow her. She's doing an awesome little series. It's called In the Blink of Mind. I think you're on number 2.
I have a. It's fine.
She'll clarify what I just said when we're talking. But she's really one of the few that's publishing her findings as she goes, and it's incredibly helpful. So if you're creating VR content, go and read what she's writing on Medium. We also have Jason Riggs. He's the CEO of OSIC. Give it up. So OSIC is creating headphones and 3D audio technology that is blowing away Kickstarter right now. They surpassed their $100,000 Kickstarter goal and have raised close to $450,000 in the past 4 days. And there's a ton of interest and support behind this audio movement, which is incredibly important for VR. And then we also have Andu Shah. Give it up for Andu. He is the technical director for Jetlay, which is on the Gear VR experiences over there. And I encourage you all to check it out. It's a really awesome experience. It's about 10 minutes. But he's one of the independent artists who's been making the leap into VR and beginning to explore it, which is really awesome. And then Tyler Hurd. Tyler Hurd, give it up for Tyler Hurd. He is behind Butts VR fame and also Old Friend, which a handful of you have seen on the Vive. He has a wicked sense of humor, and he's a great 3D animator local to San Francisco. So I'm going to start asking some questions. Here's a mic. You guys are going to pass these around. But the point of this discussion is to really help open source the information that these awesome artists have been coming across as they begin working on VR. And you know, with VR, like I said, there are no rules. It's the Wild West. There's no language. We haven't defined how we're speaking about it yet. But these are the people who are actually helping define that language. So hopefully this will be a learning experience and something that you guys can actually get some insights into from all their hard work. So I'm going to ask you a quick question for the audience. Raise your hand if you have worked on a VR project. Wow, that's awesome. And how many of you after tonight are interested in exploring VR as a medium? About everybody else. So VR has the power to do that. It has the power to really get you excited and wanting to explore. So I'm so glad that you guys all are excited to do that. I want to talk though, first I want to ask you guys about what's quickly becoming, you know, cliche or tired or trope within VR. You know, is it an example I'll give is like a point of view experience of a paralyzed man in a wheelchair that you put people through. Are you seeing certain types of experiences that are kind of playing off of the subtleties of VR?
Giants. I think there are like already 7 films with giants in them. I think like the initial reaction to VR was, whoa, you can make this huge thing and it would look awesome. And so a lot of the first films were just like, check out this giant, it's huge. And it's great, and I think that's already becoming kind of cliche at this point.
What else? Is there anything else that's getting tired or you're sick of seeing so far? Or
there's a lot of like translation of regular media into VR, like okay, whatever work, just translate it and see what happens. And there's a lot of big names doing that. Like somebody just sticks the camera in a swimming pool and somebody swims by. And it's like the best thing. There's a lot of these like things that are happening.
people dancing at me. Do you see this? I see that all the time. It's just like these people that dance at me, and it's just like the worst feeling. Because I'm like, it's like that thing where you have that dream where you're on a stage and you don't know any of your lines, and suddenly you're like kind of amidst these people that are like looking at you as if you're supposed to do something and you can't.
You're gonna hate my project. It's all that.
Maybe it'll let me reimagine what it could be like. You know, like maybe it'd be.
I like what you said about dreams. Someone once explained VR to me as a lucid dream, and they say, how do you explain a lucid dream? Like how do you take that image and put it into someone else's mind? So I've had a lot of trouble trying to think of like how I define a genre of an experience in VR. Are there certain categories or buckets that you begin to put VR experiences? Have you defined any sort of genres for experiences yet?
A little early.
Actually, the cool part about VR now is that you see of all genres. Like, it started as a lot of people are going to do horror, because somebody said that anything you put in VR could be horror, because you're all the time surprised. But I think that the exciting thing is actually you can see in a lot of variety of things, and they're all very surprising, and you think, whoa, that's a thing, that's an experience. It started with a lot of also GoPro sports line stuff in 360, and you're the guy who's jumping off a cliff, or you're the guy who's going downhill with a bike, but it's opening up a lot.
Now, most of you have worked on animated experiences, except you've done a live action experience, but personal preference, are animated experiences going to dominate VR initially, or live action? What have you gauged from like public interest?
I think it's a mix. Wow, this works now. No, it's a huge mix. Like I work in live action, and Energy works mostly in animation, and you achieve different things. I think that both will exist and both will test different things out.
And I think one of the important things is they probably converge. A lot of us are working towards that. How do you converge live action and gameplay and get towards interactive storytelling and see what sort of power that has, where you can actually start taking decisions. And it's not just decisions like, okay, take that and open the story. It's more deeper decisions that have emphasis on the story itself.
What about, so I mean, the experiences right now they're very visually driven, right? Like this immersive medium is something that's really interesting to explore. I could look up and down, I could look in all directions, but how important is audio and the problems around audio to actually make amazing VR? I'm looking at you, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, we think that audio is going to be key, and I think, one of the reasons is, if we really think about this, so when you did your introduction, you were talking about breaking this sort of fixed frame of reference, right? So fundamentally, in VR, we're delivering you this full sphere with 3D perception. But the reality is, visually, there still is a rectangle there. It's a window into the world, right? But we are limited by this 110-degree field of vision. So at any given point, we're only looking at about 15% of the sphere. And what we've seen is, a lot of, it's early, so a lot of the experiences, as you mentioned, are sort of taking things done in other media. So there's some that are basically, we're moving our head as a frame of reference. But a lot of the experiences still have a fixed frame of reference for audio. So it's just stereo audio, maybe it has no head tracking. If it does have head tracking, it may not have spatialization. And so I think, what we've seen is even just directing basic storytelling in 3D, that audio is probably the most natural cue to let us know that something's happening in front of us and behind us. And so we have the ability to see anywhere in the whole sphere. We can only see 10, 15, 20%. So I think, having that accurate audio with the proper frame of reference and proper spatialization is going to be one of the easiest ways to direct people's attention and move them around in the media. But also, a lot of the experiences where there is no tracking on the audio, it can be quite a disconnect, right? If we hear something and we look towards it and it's not where we expect it to be. And so I thought one of the experiences I played around with, the Notes on Blindness, was quite interesting. But quite interesting in that it sort of toned the visual element down. Because we can see, a lot of this is super immersive, right? So some of the experiences can be overwhelming, visually overwhelming in terms of interactivity, but really sort of toning it down and letting people appreciate the other senses, I think, is something that we're going to see as audio matures away.
Jessica, Rashid, have you guys put a lot of emphasis on audio for the projects that you're working on at Google? Yeah. And has it been more difficult to get through the audio hurdles than it has been the actual visual immersive hurdles of the site?
Most definitely. So as you said, audio is half of the experience at least. And although when we started, we were always thinking of people that don't have great audio or don't have a headset with them, can't hear. But still, especially when we actually moved from animation to live action with the help piece with Justin Lin, it's where we introduced our 360 audio and we started playing with it. And that was half the experience. Without it, you can totally see that people are not getting what's happening, or they can't follow. Most of the work in VR is about helping, directing people to some extent as to what's interesting and what's not, because this big frame that we just gave to people in 360 is too much, actually. So you're trying to always get people's attention, not to overwhelm them, but you're trying to tell them, here's where things could be, because people are all the time sort of nervous as to what am I doing next, as you see the next bit of the story. And so audio is huge, and audio also gives you a nice way to move the pacing of your story, because you're trying to say, I know you're looking, and especially if you're doing an interactive story, I know you're looking at this interesting scenery here and you're enjoying this side story maybe, but there's something really good happening over here and I want to pull your attention to it. So it's a nice way of definitely, and 360 audio for sure is a big part of all these experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, audio is huge. I don't understand what our problem is with just doing video. I guess it's just a result of being, in film for so long, and it's just like a sad reality. It's like people will put on a headset, and then the second part is to put on the headphones. So we actually made it a point to put on the headphones before the headset, so that people were like, oh, okay, I should listen to this. Because otherwise they're just like, oh, okay, cool, and then they put it down and they walk. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, there's a lot kind of working against audio. I mean, for me, which is a shame because it's really important, because for us it was just the workflow of working with spatial audio it's not the most user-friendly experience, whereas you have the visuals, you get a flat stitch back and you're able to edit, and it's a different workflow. But I think I totally agree with Rashid, honestly. It's one of the most important, if not one, I actually think it's a lot of ways, maybe it's as important, if not in some cases more important than the visuals.
Yes, no, I'd agree. Well, one thing that I like to say is you watch a movie, you can put up with bad video quality, right? If you really want to see the movie, you can watch it 480p and survive. But the moment that the sound is off and you see that the lips aren't right, you can't watch it. It's unwatchable. Your brain just does not want to vibe with it. And in game development, which is a lot of the skill sets that people are jumping in from to create VR experiences, game development, audio has always been last in the workflow. You do everything and then you add in sound effects. So it's we're flipping it on its head, and I would agree. I think that in a lot of cases, if not most cases, audio is just as important, if not more important, than the visual fidelity of the experience. Have you seen that in Jetlag?
I mean, totally. There's so much working against audio in terms of creating a soundscape and just recording stuff. We need an OSIC for recording. I use a simple solution where I can throw in a microphone array and get a binaural output. It's so hard. Right now, there's so few sound designers in the world who can deal with this sort of stuff. Binaural was around 40 years ago, but it sort of hasn't come in its own until VR is not there. So it's really difficult to work with it because there aren't that many people that know how to get that workflow going. So we really need something that makes it easy, especially for live action. And for game design, it's so much easier because the game engines take care of position of sound for you. You can actually place sound and you can add a track with a character. That needs to be done manually, keyframe by keyframe in live actions.
I was just going to say that everything's so inaccessible right now that, like, it kind of makes sense. Like, you don't know what you're dealing with as far as headphones go. You have basic headphones. You don't know how people are going to be experiencing it. When you're experiencing it here, it's like there's all this stuff going on. You wanted to do like a muted, calm experience. It's going to get lost in a place like this. Like, once people have it all in their home, I think we'll probably see a lot more of that stuff. At least.
Yeah, I mean, you guys all have drank the Kool-Aid. You're in the VR mix. You're starting to really look at it. But things like you mentioned, like the tool sets, what is holding more traditional filmmakers back from jumping into VR and really exploring it as a way of telling stories? Is it tools? Is it users? Is it distribution? What do you think it is that's stopping people in this audience from putting more time and attention towards VR?
The million-dollar question is how are we going to make money? So how's everyone going to watch it? Like, how many headsets are out there? How long are people watching content? Can you watch content for more than 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? You know, the guy in Germany watched for 48 hours. And I was like, oh. So there's a lot of questions around distribution and consumption, actually, which is preventing a lot of people. And I mean, it's so big here, but it's also a little bit of a bubble in a way. Like, you go to different places and you ask people, and they're like, yeah, I know what virtual reality is, and you show them the headset, and they're like, oh, no, it's not like that.
Yeah, I would add, I mean, specifically, to touch on the audio part again, I mean, the tools and the workflow is a huge part of it. So every show we go to, someone comes up and says, how do I live capture the audio? I say, well, there's these 3 or 4 mics out. I say, great, now what do I do? How do I make a track? What do I put it into? And so, I mean, the great thing is that there are these experiences that are starting to showcase what's possible, and like the help one, it's great. Positional audio, it's great. Again, maybe had a team of 80 people or whatever I saw in the making of it. And so, especially when we see the independent developers, I think a lot of the pieces just aren't there. And in just sort of if you saw this picture going around with Mark Zuckerberg walking by everyone wearing masks. As an audio guy, the first thing maybe I noticed was that no one had any headphones on. I mean, imagine having a theater experience and there was literally no speakers. So just to kind of showcase how mature it is, the fact that you can gather 1,000 people and put these on and do a demo with no audio and that's acceptable, is sort of just maybe highlights how big the gap is.
How far we need to go? Just in that sheet?
Well, I think the ecosystem is still very complicated. Like to watch VR or to, nobody has devices, the phone stuff is still early, so that's the first one that hopefully this year is going to get resolved. And content is also still at the very experimental level. Everything that we do is still very short, although we try to put stories that people actually care about as a piece of content, not as a VR experience. And that's important also for everybody that's working in VR, even the guys that are coming from games, is what's my target? Because if you're targeting game developers, then you know what those guys want. And if you're targeting the general audience that want to watch something cool, and maybe have an interesting experience living inside of it, but still, if it's not that interesting, then I'm going to get the impression that this is not something that's for me.
So what is something, tell me your favorite piece of VR content that you didn't work on. What's interesting to you? What have you seen that isn't out of your own team that has really grabbed your attention?
I still think I'm mostly, maybe not, as everybody else here, but I am mostly interested in the content itself. I like the stories. So, let's say watching Henry, for example, and just sort of starting to feel like what is it being in the universe of that character, and just being totally immersed and sitting there and having that experience, living in a story for a moment, forgetting anything else in the world. That was the best thing for me. Few experiential pieces get to that level. Of course, we all love expeditions and things where we go somewhere in the world and just be there. I think that's still very interesting. That's probably going to be the most interesting for general audience yet. Gamers will get their games. But other than that, I think storytelling is definitely has to be the way to get a lot of people to watch.
Yeah, no, I agree. What else? Anybody else have an experience that's really gotten their interest that they're not working on?
Notes on Blindness is awesome. I really like those guys. I like what they did. And I actually saw Notes on Blindness was originally a short film that was off docs for the New York Times like a few years ago, and I saw it at Sundance and I loved it. And so it was great to see them do a VR piece based upon that, and then make it. It's awesome. It's just a really good.
What about the experience was interesting?
I mean, it's an audio based. I mean, it's like you don't see the visual until the audio hits, and I think that's a really brilliant way of like having something emerge from your environment instead of something just being there that you see. I think a couple other things. Oscar Raby's The Ascent is awesome. It's like polygonal human stuff, so it's like it's not like photorealistic human things, which is what people try to do, and it's always a little weird. So, there's another thing that I can remember.
Anybody else? Let's give the people a watch list. Is there anything else that's really interesting? You guys have seen a lot more VR than most people, I'm assuming.
I mean, for me, it was probably Valve's like Aperture robot repair demo. I mean, it's just the first one that it's like, okay, I've seen a lot of demos. There were a lot of things with. It was the first one I would say I really felt presence, and it just. I mean, it was one of my first demos on the Vive, and so that was probably part of it. But just that in terms of the quality, it's sort of showing like what the potential will be specifically for gaming. I think that was the first like standout one for me. I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be like this. This is going to be amazing.
I saw one at Sundance this year. It was called In the Eyes of the Animal.
Yeah, and I think we have that here on the DK too. If you guys want to check that out.
I mean, it was just being in the perspective of another animal going through the life cycle of the forest, and that was so far what you would probably be able to do normally. That was really awesome. I really like the blue VR, just around it, and I go again and water. So that just made me feel like, whoa, blue in hot water.
I liked Waves, the one with Reggie Watts.
I love Waves.
This was really funny. It was good. I like how they kind of transport you to different locations throughout the film and kind of use experiences.
I'm a big fan of Interspace VR. They have a piece called The Fifth Sleep in the Cave. I really like The Fifth Sleep because it like totally put me in a dream. Like they start you in this like MRI machine, you get shrunk down, shot into this guy's head, and then you're in a dream. And it had like every element, like the sense of scale, the lucid dream effect, like I don't know what's going on, the audio was really good, but they really opened my eyes to what's possible. I think that was one of the first experiences that I saw on Gear VR, and it just kind of blew me away.